Hey, everybody. Today we have guest filmmaker, playwright, screenwriter, and actor Neil LaBute. Neil is known for such films as The Wicker Man and In the Company of Men, but he is here to discuss his new film, House of Darkness. Neil, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, Neil, at the start of your career, what inspired you to make films about subjects that many people don't really want to talk about instead of playing it safe?
Well, at the beginning of your career, often no one cares about you. And then at the end of your career, you find out actually that no one cares about you as well. But in the beginning, that nobody is not care. They don't know about you really. And so you're depending on the route that you take. And mine was, with very little money, the first film I made, there was no one there to kind of stop me. I had a script that I wanted to do, and I hadn't seen anybody else do that kind of thing. And maybe a couple films in France that were kind of dancing around the same world. And so there was no one to say, oh no, we don't think people will like that, or is that going to be too mean, or this or that. You kind of are off on your own, and you go make the thing that you make, and you hope that it connects with people. So I think part of it is just the this is what you've got, and then it's the freedom to make it is because you're controlling the purse strings, and so you go off and you do it and spend your money making it.
Yeah. So there's a theme, it seems like, in a number of your works, and a lot of it has to do with gender dynamics.
Yeah.
And I know that that's also caught you some backlash in the past.
Of course.
But, of course, because it's one of those divisive topics, I think. People can look at it from a lot of different ways. What are your thoughts about it, and why is that a focus point for you? And just for people to know, like, In the Company of Men deals a lot with that. And that was a playwright that you had made, correct?
It was a script that was first on stage, and then became a film. Okay. This feels like it's more divisive now than it was 25 years ago. It's definitely, people are very interested in gender politics, gender dynamics, and so it has remained something that people do want to discuss. You get it, because people are whoever they are. Most people are in some relationship, or have been, and they've felt the push pull, the power dynamics of a relationship, and so when you put that on screen and you have something to say about it, then that makes people wonder what your politics in terms of that. Not only do they judge what you've presented fictionally, but then they wonder, how do you feel about all those things, and where do you fall on what side of the line? Which character do you, if any, imagine yourself to be? Those kinds of things. Is this your story? Have you it's all those questions come at you. If it was Star Wars, they probably wouldn't be asking those same questions. They're like, what planet are you from? They would just be like talking specifically about the story. But because it's rooted in things that we all live, they then assume that you are connected to it in a way beyond just a story that you wrote.
I have a feeling that you like to play with people's thoughts about that a little bit too, because you kind of go in a lot of different directions, starting with In the Company of Men, but then looking at more of a feminist film like The Wicker Man, and even this new film, House of Darkness, which people will be able to check out. Again, you play with that, and it's sometimes, especially in this new film, it's kind of hard to read, like, what side is he coming from here? I like that. It kind of kept me thinking.
I think that's probably a better ride for an audience. If they're feeling like, oh, I'm just viewing this because it's somebody else's polemic, then it doesn't allow them the same sort of in. They don't get to go, wait a minute, which way who are we sitting with here? Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist? Is there such a thing here? Or is this just like a little weird modern fable, about what looks like a meet cute stops being cute relatively quickly, and then becomes something else.
Yeah.
Now, are you a big horror fan? If so, what are some of your favorite films, and what are some ones that inspire you when you're writing horror films?
I've been connected and in love with the genre for a long time. I date back to the original Dark Shadows as sort of the roots for me. My mom was a fan, liked to be scared. You know, it was as simple as she kind of feared and loved to be scared. And but we would watch Dark Shadows. She would keep me home from school sometimes. Dark Shadows came on in the morning, and she would sometimes keep me home, let me watch Dark Shadows, and then take me to school and write a note that said we had car trouble or that sort of thing. So I mean, way back then, I was interested in vampires, and Barnabas Collins was a fascinating character, and Angelique, all those characters that were in that. So I love that. You know, Jaws, absolutely. I mean, Spielberg just crushed swimming for me for like 50 years, just like ruined swimming pools, bathtubs, just, you know, took out the idea of any kind of like dark water. So thanks for that. But, you know, I mean, incredible viewing. I run the gamut of, you know, I like very psychological stuff. I like everything from like a Polanski Repulsion to Psycho to a good, you know, high body count. I don't mind anything that, you know, High Tension was a great one. You know, so I'm keen to be scared as well. That heritage has continued. I think, like a lot of people, I'm often, is it let down, or is it's less than I imagined it was going to be? Because I always pump them in my head as like, this is going to be great and scary, and, you know, a good one sheet or a trailer can really get me in a good place. And then maybe the film doesn't maximize that experience. But I'm a great candidate for horror films. You know, and I go in always like, I can't wait to see this one, you know. And so I've been watching them for, you know, 50 years and enjoying them for as long. So and as far as a, you know, source, I mean, Dracula is a key. I mean, I adapted Dracula for the stage. I worked on Van Helsing, the television show. So I've put in, you know, some time in the trenches with that myth. It's such an interesting, strong myth, and it's amazing how many directions it's been pulled and still works. And so I took another piece of that myself here and said, how does that apply to something today, to somebody, you know, running into three weird sisters today? What do we get with that? And House of Darkness was what came out of it.
There you
go. So we're going to get into House of Darkness very soon, but before we do that, I want to ask you a question that hopefully you don't leave this interview right now, and hopefully you haven't heard it too many times. I do want to ask your opinion about your film, The Wicker Man, and some of the mixed reception about it. And
I mean, I've had mixed reception all my life, so you know,
I'm curious to hear your, like, after the project's said and done, it's been sitting there for a while, you've been able to reflect on it. How do you feel about the film today? Was there definite things you would have changed, or would you have left it the same?
But that goes for every movie I've worked on. But I think definitely there, you know, there was a you know, you always start with a vision of like, this is what you're hoping to do, and this is where you end up. And how close are those two balloons? You know, sometimes they're miles apart, sometimes they're hanging right next to each other. I think there were a lot of people with a lot of different ideas working on that picture and trying to figure out exactly what that movie was. Was it horror? Was there comedy? Absolutely, there was comedy. You know, but I mean, you can't have a guy running around with a bear suit on and without having some sense of this might make people laugh, you know. But if you take that bear suit, you know, that guy in the bear suit and burn him up at the end, you think, well, that might stop them laughing. And maybe it did for some, and maybe it didn't for others. But you know, there was always a hope that we were going to find the right tone for it. And I'm not sure we always landed the right tone. And tone is tough. I mean, it's tough. I've done things that I thought had a harder tone, and we probably landed it closer to what I thought it should be, which something like Nurse Betty. You know, the tone in a movie like that went from whimsical to romantic comedy to someone getting scalped to, you know, so it was like, how do you make that all work for an audience? Sometimes you just get luckier than other times. It's as hard to make, a good movie is a bad one, and a bad one is a good one. Takes the same amount of time and energy and people and all those things. And so I haven't watched the movie in a while, but it's I know even when I was cutting it that you're looking at something and going, I don't know if we got that quite right or not. But you go out and you do the best work you can and hope you get it right, and so it had a great time making it, and Nick was incredible to work with, and there's never, I worked with a lot of good people, but I can't say I've ever worked with anybody who pitches in and just goes for it, harder all day long than that guy, and no idea is too wild, and
you're also left with one of the most iconic Nicolas Cage scenes of,
I mean, right?
Bees,
whether it's good, iconic, or bad, you've got one, right?
Yep.
So it's you have to appreciate a guy like that who is willing to go as hard as he can and never pull back. So that was a pleasure to watch.
Yeah. So let's flash forward to present day. We're here to discuss House of Darkness.
Yeah.
Neil, could you give our listeners like a brief little synopsis of the film? No spoilers.
Are we getting a hard light there now?
Yeah.
See if I can help.
How
was
go.
that?
That was easy.
Was just one there. Look at that.
There you
You
go.
either edit that or you let people see the process.
Yeah.
See behind the curtain for a second. Literally curtain. Tell me again. What was it?
So like a quick synopsis, spoiler free, of House of Darkness.
Sure. Yeah. It follows a guy who meets a woman in a bar, offers her a ride home, and what feels like the kind of an interesting take on the power dynamic of a date. Technically it's not really a date, but it's two people meet. Hopefully they met cute, in the bar and had their banter, and so this smitten guy comes home with this woman, and by virtue of being who he is, a guy, he feels safe enough to walk into what feels like a castle in the woods, and the lights go out, but he none of those things seem to throw him. He just kind of keeps going with this notion of, wow, this woman is really interesting and exotic and beautiful, and I want to spend time with her. And we watch him just kind of, all the places where red flags should be going up, he just keeps marching forward and saying, feeling as if he's in control of the situation. I think very late in the game he still feels like he's in control of the situation, but I think horror in particular allows you, or fantasy or that kind of thing, allows you to turn the tables on a situation in a way that reality so often does less of that. It's like, oh, this is what would really happen. We're not interested in that. We start the movie with Once Upon a Time, so it's obviously we're headed toward some kind of fable that wants to say, maybe this is what not this is what needs to happen, but this is what happens in a situation where the power can be reversed.
Yeah. So now this film stars Justin Long and Kate Bosworth, which they're a couple after getting to know each other more after making this film. What was it like working with these two on this film?
Well, I mean, there was some sense of I've actually had this happen a couple of times on stage or on screen where people you brought together have become a couple, and so often you can just, it's, casting is such a funny thing, but you can feel that dynamic of like, wow, this is really clicking. These people are really working. That's what I was feeling, like they were connecting as actors really well. And so, obviously it worked. And I think there's a really palpable sense of two people who are finding themselves enjoying the company of the other person. The whole thing was shot quickly at night, like a play. We shot lots and lots of pages. So, we had to jump in running and kind of never stop. It was a quick, hard shoot in those terms. But sometimes those are the best. You don't have a lot of time to second guess yourself and worry about, oh, did I make mistakes? You just kind of map things out and say, this is it, and we grab as much footage as we can. It was fun to have them both in parts where a lot of who they are as a person really helped the character grow. For Justin, I think it was the sort of thing where people see him and they go, oh, even if they don't know his name, they're like, oh, I like that guy, he's funny. And so he could get away saying stuff that another actor cast in that part, you'd kind of look at him and go,
yeah,
do I like this guy? Is he an asshole? What's going on with him? You know what I mean? For a long time, Justin has this boyish charm, and so you kind of let things go that somebody else might not. And Kate just has this perfect, like, kind of ethereal stillness that I think slowly starts unnerving this guy, and hopefully with the audience as well. We kind of go, what's up with her? So they fit that's a huge thing when somebody can come in and just fit the part and make it work like that. So it helps anytime, but it really helps when you have a short production schedule.
Sounds like I'm sorry, Brian. I was just gonna say, sounds like any single actors and actresses should hit you up for a role in your film.
Right, a little matchmaking on the side, of like, hey, they would be good with it. I mean, yeah, it's happened a couple times. So it's I'm trying to think if they're all still together. I don't know if they all are. So I can't promise that the odds are it's for eternity, but it's like at least there's a connection.
Yeah, and like you said, the connections. And your wife is also in this film. Gia, she plays as Lucy, and so she was definitely added, like, a great character that added in, just popped out of nowhere. You're like, oh, okay.
She too has that, that ability to be like really still and she tells a good story. She I can count on her because she's done so much theater to really, I could say, oh yeah, here's this 5-page thing. Could you do that?
Yep.
And she's like, yeah, I'll get that. I got that for you. And I could also help rehearse. So you get some free rehearsal when you're that connected. So that's not a bad thing either.
So now, we talked with many actors, writers, and directors about the experience of creating films during the pandemic. What was it like for you creating this project during that time?
This was, probably and possibly even why it got made during that time was because most people could look at it and say, oh, this has a high probability of success rate in terms of getting finished. You know what I mean? Like, this is not taking place across the Los Angeles, city limits. This is contained in one place in the countryside. The cast and crew will be small, and so I think all those things helped people who financed it go, yeah, this is something we can actually get done, and with COVID restrictions, we'll be able to finish it. So that was a huge important thing during that period of time, for those couple of years that we were dealing with those restrictions. And certainly early on, it was hugely important that you could promise people, yeah, we're not going to like be halfway through and then have to stop. And there was no margin for error with what we were doing. We got through and nobody got sick, and so it was a good go.
Awesome. So you alluded to this a little earlier, as far as the way the tale plays out. It's almost like you're watching a play, and that's exactly one of the thoughts I had when I was watching it. So when I was looking at like your career and seeing that you worked with plays and as a screenwriter, playwright, and everything like that, it totally made sense to me. Was that deliberate as far as trying to like it's very dialogue heavy for a while, and it like I said, it feels like you're just watching this this cast of characters kind of like take you on a roller coaster ride. You don't really know where you're going. So what was your intentions with that? Was that deliberate?
Sure. Yeah. Again, that was something very, very controllable, but very much that was like what I'm used to. I often try and drag in the world of theater that I've been a part of, and mesh it with films. I've done some very small. I did a film a couple years ago with Stanley Tucci and Alice Eve, all in one house, called Some Velvet Morning. I like those kind of chamber pieces, and I like to watch them as well. So, but they're, it's a lot of work too when you do long takes and stuff. It's people have to really be on top of their game as actors. But I do think that's part of what attracts them, is that they know they're going to get to act with their partner. They're going to get to sit in the same frame with them, and they're both on camera and talking and setting the pace. And so it's not the usual sort of like, I'll do my side, you do your side, they'll cut it together and make it work. It feels like they're really getting a chance to act with their partner.
Yeah, nice. And so, this movie had like great practical effects and really cool gore. A lot of films are missing out on that, take an easy way out doing CGI. What made you want to stay true to this film and kind of keep the practical effects going?
Well, because it was possible, but also because there's nothing quite like them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what the difference is, right? I mean, if you must watch tons of films, and it's just so obvious the difference between practical gore and CGI stuff. And sometimes there's some amazing CGI stuff that you can see, but you can always just tell. It's one of those. It's sort of, there's always a disclaimer when you're like, oh, wow, for CGI that was great. That's always the disclaimer, as opposed to like when you see a practical effect, you're just like, oh, awesome, that just looks so great. And so because it was fairly controlled, we knew that we could go for it, and so we just did. And I've used those in the past. I used some really great ones in Nurse Betty. We had a scalping that we did that was, the end result was pretty good, I think, in the movie, but the original stuff that we did was pretty horrific. So once we actually saw what we had, we were like, oh, that's probably going to take some editing to get ourselves, even an R rating with that. And there was a scene when Chris Rock near the end of the film got shot, and like his whole face blew off and like hit the lens, and you can't do that really with CGI in the same way. It's the practical effect was incredible. So I just think the value for the viewer is very high when you work with practical effects, and so it was a chance to do those.
Yeah. Well, Neil, I know that you have to get going, but this was a pleasure to be able to chat about your career a little bit and about this film. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. It was great to talk. And are you both in Providence?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
fantastic.
There's actually normally a third member as well, Joshua. He wasn't able to be here today.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Do you want to tell people?
I'm
where
just
to
saying
find
that. I
you?
don't know Joshua, so I'm not that sorry. But
Do
he's
you want
sorry.
to tell people where to find you?
What's that?
Can you tell people where they can find you if you're on social media at all?
Oh, I'm not. I have a company called Contemptible Entertainment. That there's a Twitter thing on there. I like post movie posters that I like and performances I like, and that's about it. I don't really do anything else. But I do like Providence. You guys have some incredible. I've been told not to call it a hot dog.
Wieners. Yeah, wieners.
Yep.
Boy, I didn't think I was gonna get into that, and they are addictively great.
Yes.
So there's that truck down by where is it, downtown by that hotel, by the Graduate. I guess now it's the Graduate Hotel.
Yeah.
That comes in there. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Next time you come, you got to go to New York System. That's
I've been.
Okay.
And I had that. Essentially what was chocolate milk, but they called it something else. Coffee milk.
Yep.
I was like, this is weird. It doesn't really taste like coffee or milk, but the hot dogs, wieners, incredible. Really great.
Well, thank you again, Neil. Everyone, check out House of Darkness. It's in theaters September 9th, on demand and digital September 13th. And we hope everybody enjoys it.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
You too.